Everyone thinks old wedding dresses are just dusty memories. My daughter proved that wrong when she shredded mine for a Halloween costume. She didn't know she was cutting through a $2 million inheritance. The attic of the Victorian house on Monument Avenue was always 10 degrees colder than the rest of the world, especially in late October. The wind from the James River seemed to find every gap in the slate roof, whistling through the rafters like a lost spirit seeking warmth. I pulled my knitted shawl tighter around my shoulders, my fingers stiff with the early onset of winter and the deeper, more permanent cold of old age. My name is Iris Blackwood. I am 75 years old. I live in the attic of a house I bought in 1968. A house I restored with my own hands, stripping the lead paint and polishing the heart pine floors until they glowed like honey. 5 years ago, after a minor stroke that frightened me more than I care to admit, I signed the deed over to my daughter, Paula. I thought I was securing my future. I thought I was keeping the family together. I was wrong. I stood before the cedar closet in the corner, the one place in this drafty garret that was supposed to be safe from moths and time. Today was the 25th of October. It would have been my 54th wedding anniversary. Arthur has been gone for 10 years now, but I still keep the appointment. Every year, on this day, I come to the closet. I unzip the heavy canvas garment bag. I touch the Chantilly lace of my wedding gown. I remember the way Arthur looked when I walked down the aisle, his eyes wide, his hands trembling as he reached for me. Arthur was a jeweler. He worked with diamonds, rubies, and gold, but he always said that the dress, a masterpiece I had stitched myself over 6 months of sleepless nights, was the most valuable thing in the room. I reached for the zipper of the garment bag. My hand grasped at empty air. I frowned. I adjusted my glasses. I reached again, sweeping my hand across the wooden rod. There was nothing there. The heavy, canvas bag was gone. The space where it had hung for half a century was empty. A dark void in the cedar-scented air. A cold spike of panic drove itself into my chest. I dropped to my knees, ignoring the protest of my joints, and felt around the floor. Maybe it had fallen. Maybe the hook had given way. But the floor was bare, save for a layer of dust. "No," I whispered. "No, no, no." I stood up, my heart hammering a frantic, uneven rhythm against my ribs. I turned around, scanning the attic. The boxes of Christmas decorations were there. The old high chair was there, but my dress was gone. Then, I heard it. It was a sound coming from 2 floors down, drifting up through the heating vents that Paula kept closed in the attic to save money. It was the sound of laughter. It was the high, cruel giggle of my 16-year-old granddaughter, Bella, and joined with it was the throaty, smoky laugh of my daughter, Paula. And underneath the laughter, there was another sound, a sharp, rhythmic sound. Snip, snip, snip. And then, a tearing sound, like a bedsheet being ripped in half. A sense of dread, heavy and suffocating, settled over me. It was the same feeling you get when you smell smoke in the middle of the night. I moved toward the attic stairs. I moved faster than I should have, my hand gripping the banister so hard my knuckles turned white. I descended to the 2nd floor, past the bedrooms where Paula and Bella slept in warmth and comfort, while I shivered above them. The smell hit me on the landing. It was a sweet, metallic, cloying scent. It smelled like corn syrup and red food dye. It smelled like a cheap carnival. I walked down the main staircase to the 1st floor. The laughter was louder now. "Oh my God, Mom, look at this!" Bella shrieked. "It shreds so easily." "It is dry rot, honey," Paula laughed. "Just rip it. Make it look jagged." I reached the bottom of the stairs. I walked through the foyer, past the antique mirror Arthur had bought me in London, and stood in the archway of the parlor. The scene before me stopped the blood in my veins. The parlor, my beautiful parlor with its velvet settees and Persian rug, looked like a slaughterhouse. Bella was standing on top of my mahogany coffee table in her socks. She was wearing the bodice of a dress, my dress. The delicate, hand-stitched Chantilly lace, imported from France in 1969, was tight against her torso. But the sleeves, the long, tapered sleeves I had spent weeks embroidering with seed pearls, were gone. They had been hacked off at the shoulders, leaving frayed, ugly edges. And the skirt, the voluminous, cathedral-length skirt, made of heavy silk satin and layers of tulle, was in ribbons. Paula was kneeling on the floor. She was holding a pair of heavy kitchen shears, the ones I used to cut poultry. She was laughing as she slashed at the fabric, cutting deep, jagged gashes into the silk. On the floor beside her was a plastic Home Depot bucket filled with a thick, red liquid. "Okay, hold still," Paula yelled. She dipped a large paintbrush into the bucket. She lifted it, dripping with the fake blood, and slapped it against the white lace of the bodice Bella was wearing. Splat. The red stain bloomed across the vintage fabric, soaking into the delicate fibers, ruining them instantly. Yes! Bella screamed, looking down at herself. That looks so gross! It is perfect! I am going to be the best zombie bride at the party. Spin around, Paula commanded. Let me get the back. Bella spun. The tattered remains of the skirt whipped around her legs. I tried to speak. I tried to scream, but my throat was closed tight with horror. I felt like I was watching an autopsy on a living thing. That dress was not just fabric. It was the memory of the happiest day of my life. It was the symbol of a marriage that had survived poverty, illness, and time. And they were butchering it for a TikTok video. Stop, I whispered. They did not hear me over their own laughter and the music blasting from Bella's phone. I took a step into the room. I banged my cane hard against the floorboards. Stop, I screamed. The sound tore out of my throat, raw and primal. Bella froze on the table. Paula stopped mid-slash with the scissors. They both turned to look at me. For a second, there was silence. Just the sound of Bella's heavy breathing and the drip 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 of the corn syrup blood falling onto my Persian rug. I looked at Paula. My daughter. The woman I had raised, educated, and given a home to when her second husband left her with nothing. What have you done? I choked out, tears finally spilling over my cheeks. That is my wedding dress. That is my anniversary. Paula looked at me. She did not look ashamed. She did not look sorry. She looked annoyed. She rolled her eyes, a gesture so dismissive it felt like a slap. Oh God, Paula sighed, standing up and wiping her sticky hands on her jeans. Here we go. The drama. Drama? I pointed a shaking finger at Bella. You stole from me. You went into my attic and you stole the most precious thing I own. We did not steal it, Grandma, Bella said, hopping down from the table. She picked at a loose thread on the ruined bodice. We borrowed it. It is just a costume. I needed something vintage for the Halloween bash at Tyler's house. Amazon did not have anything that looked real. It is real, I cried. It is my life. It was in a bag, Mother, Paula snapped. It has been sitting in that dark attic for 50 years. Nobody sees it. Nobody cares about it. It was yellowing. It smelled like mothballs. I care about it, I shouted. Arthur cared about it. Arthur is dead, Paula said cold-ply. And honestly, you should be happy. At least now the dress is getting some use. Bella is going to put it on TikTok. You are going to be viral, Mother. Isn't that nice? She dipped the brush back into the bucket. Now move, Paula said, stepping toward Bella with the red paint. We have to finish the distressing before the blood dries. It needs to look crusty. I walked forward. I reached out and grabbed the fabric of the skirt that was pooling on the floor. It was wet and sticky. Take it off, I commanded Bella. Take it off right now. Bella recoiled. No! We spent 2 hours fitting this. You are ruining my vibe. Paula, I said, turning to my daughter. Tell her to take it off. This is disrespectful. It is cruel. Paula laughed. She looked me up and down, taking in my old wool cardigan, my orthotic shoes, my gray hair. She looked at me with the contempt of a woman who believes she owns the world because her mother handed her the keys. You are being ridiculous, Paula said. It is just a rag, Mother. Look at it. She reached out and grabbed a piece of the lace I had stitched by hand in 1969. She yanked it. The old fibers snapped. See? She sneered. It is falling apart. It is trash. She looked me dead in the eye. You are too ugly for the photos anyway, Paula said, her voice dripping with malice. You do not need a wedding dress. You are a widow. You are done. So stop being so dramatic over a piece of garbage that was rotting in a box. It was old anyway. She turned her back on me. Bella, turn around, she said. I need to slash the back panel. It looks too pristine. I stood there. The words hung in the air. It was old anyway. Trash. Widow. Done. I looked at the pile of fabric on the floor. I saw the jagged edges where the scissors had done their work. And then, I saw it. Lying amidst the shredded silk and the fake blood was a strip of the hem. The hem of the skirt was thick. It was padded. I had sewn it that way on purpose, creating a heavy, structured roll at the bottom to make the dress hang perfectly. It was made of double-layered silk satin, lined with velvet. Paula had cut it off completely. It was lying there like a severed snake. I stared at the hem. I remembered the night Arthur had come home from the jewelry store, 3 days before our wedding. He had been pale, sweating. He told me the banks were not safe. He told me the market was crashing. He told me he had liquidated his inventory. He had handed me a small velvet pouch. "Sew them in," he had whispered. "Sew them where no one will look. That is our insurance policy. Iris, that is our future." I looked at Paula. She was raising the scissors to cut the back of the bodice. My tears stopped. My heart slowed down. A cold, hard clarity washed over me, freezing the grief into something sharp and dangerous. I was not a sad old widow anymore. I was a woman who knew exactly what was in that hem. I took a deep breath. "Paula," I said. My voice was no longer shouting. It was quiet. It was the voice of a judge passing a sentence. Paula sighed, not turning around. "What now, Mother? Are you going to faint? Do I need to call the paramedics?" I walked over to the pile of scraps. I reached down. I picked up the severed piece of the heavy silk hem. It was heavy, heavier than fabric should be. "You did not cut the hem, did you?" I asked. Paula glanced over her shoulder, annoyed. "Of course we did," she sneered. "It was too long. Bella would have tripped on it. We hacked it off. It was lumpy and weird." I held the hem in my hands. I felt the lumps. I felt the hard, small pebbles sewn deep inside the velvet lining. I smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "Then you just cut through your inheritance," I said. The silence that followed my words was not empty. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air in a room just before the windows blow out from a gas leak. Paula stood there, the kitchen shears dangling from her hand, a drop of red corn syrup falling from the blade to the floor with a wet plip. "Inheritance," she repeated. Her voice was flat, but the sneer was gone, replaced by a flicker of genuine confusion. "What are you talking about, Mother? You do not have an inheritance. You have a pension and a house you already gave me." "I gave you the house," I said, my voice steady. "I did not give you the contents of my marriage." I walked over to the armchair in the corner, the one covered in plastic because Bella said the velvet attracted dust. I pulled the plastic off. It made a loud, crinkling sound. I sat down. I smoothed my skirt. I looked at them like a queen surveying her court, even though I was wearing a housecoat and slippers. "Arthur was a paranoid man, Paula," I said. "You remember that? He did not trust the stock market. He did not trust the banks. He remembered the stories his father told him about the Great Depression, about people losing everything overnight because a number on a ledger changed." Paula rolled her eyes, but she did not turn back to the dress. She was listening. "Greed has a way of sharpening the hearing. He trusted hard assets," I continued. "Gold, silver, and stones. Specifically, diamonds. High clarity. Unmounted, untraceable diamonds." Bella hopped off the table. She looked bored. "Grandma, are you making up a story? Because we have a party to get to." "Quiet, Bella," Paula snapped. She looked at me. "Go on." 3 days before our wedding in 1969, I said, looking at the shredded lace on the floor. "Arthur liquidated his private inventory. He emptied his safe at the shop. He came home with a velvet pouch. He told me that if anything ever happened, if the world ended, if we had to run, if the dollar collapsed, we would need currency that we could carry." I pointed to the strip of hem I was holding. "He asked me to sew them into the dress," I said. "Into the hem. Because it was the one thing he knew I would never sell. The one thing I would never throw away. It was heavy. Paula, did you not notice how heavy the skirt was when you dragged it down the stairs?" Paula blinked. Her face went pale. She looked at the tattered remains of the skirt on the floor. She remembered the weight. I saw the memory hit her. It was heavy," she whispered. "I thought it was just the fabric, the layers." "It was padded," I said. "Double-layered silk satin, lined with velvet. And inside that padding, spaced exactly 1 inch apart to prevent them from clicking together, were 50 loose diamonds." "50?" Paula choked out. "50," I confirmed. 1 carat each, VVS clarity. In 1969, they were worth about $500 apiece. Today, with inflation and the market value of vintage cuts, I paused. I did the math in the air with my finger. Conservatively, $2 million. The room spun. I could see it in their eyes. The numbers hit them like a physical blow. $2 million. That was not just money. That was a new life. That was the debt paid off. That was the private college for Bella. That was the validation Paula had been chasing her entire life. And they had just cut it off with kitchen shears. Bella looked at her mother. Mom? Is she serious? Paula dropped the scissors. They clattered onto the hardwood floor, narrowly missing her toe. She fell to her knees. She grabbed the shredded skirt. She ran her hands frantically over the fabric, feeling for lumps, feeling for the hard stones. It is just tulle, she screamed. It is just lace. Where is the hem? Where is the satin part? I watched them. I watched the panic set in. You said it was lumpy, I reminded her softly. You said it was weird. You said you hacked it off. Paula froze. Her hands were covered in the sticky red fake blood. She looked like Lady Macbeth, caught in the act. She stammered. I cut it off. Because it dragged. We wanted it to be ragged. For the zombie look. And where did you put it, Paula? I asked. Paula's eyes darted around the room. She looked at the floor. She looked at the coffee table. Then, her gaze snapped toward the kitchen. The trash, she whispered. The trash can? Bella asked. No, Paula said, her voice rising to a shriek. The compactor. I put it in the trash compactor. I ran it. I crushed it because it was taking up too much room. Silence. Absolute, terrifying silence. Then, the explosion. Get it out, Bella screamed. Mom, get it out. Paula scrambled up from the floor. She slipped on the fake blood, her knees skidding. But she did not stop. She ran into the kitchen. Bella followed her. I sat in my armchair. I did not move. I listened. I heard the sound of the trash compactor drawer being yanked open. I heard the rustle of plastic bags. I heard the wet, squelching sound of garbage being torn apart. It is not here, Paula yelled. I ran the cycle. It is at the bottom. Dig, Mom, dig! I stood up slowly. My knees popped. I walked to the archway of the kitchen. It was a scene from a nightmare. Paula and Bella were on their knees in front of the trash compactor. They had pulled the heavy, compressed bag of garbage out onto the pristine white tile floor. They were tearing it open with their bare hands. The bag split. Last night's dinner, spaghetti and meatballs spilled out, coffee grounds, eggshells, orange peels, and amidst the filth, the long, severed strips of white satin, soaked in red corn syrup and brown gravy. Find it! Paula screamed. She was clawing through the mess. Her manicure was ruined. Her designer jeans were stained with grease. Feel for the lumps. Feel for the stones. Bella was crying. It is gross, Mom. It smells like sour milk. I do not care what it smells like, Paula roared. It smells like $2 million. Find the diamonds. I leaned against the doorframe. I watched them. They looked like animals. They looked like scavengers fighting over a carcass. These were the people who told me I was too ugly for photos. These were the people who told me I smelled like mothballs. And now, they were elbow-deep in refuse, panting, sweating, covered in fake blood and real garbage. It was the most beautiful thing I had ever seen. Is this it? Bella asked, pulling out a long strip of fabric. Paula grabbed it. She squeezed it. She ran her fingers along the seam. No! She threw it down. This is just the lining. Where is the velvet? Where is the padding? She grabbed the bag of coffee grounds and dumped it on the floor, spreading the black grit everywhere. She sifted through it. Maybe they fell out, she muttered, her eyes wild. Maybe when I cut it, maybe the thread broke, and they fell out. She looked at the floor. She looked at the cracks in the tile. The vacuum, she shouted. I vacuumed. Before we started the blood, I vacuumed the loose threads. She scrambled up. She ran to the utility closet. She dragged out the Dyson vacuum cleaner. Open it, she commanded Bella. Bella fumbled with the canister. Her hands were slippery with corn syrup. She hit the release button. The bottom of the canister swung open. A cloud of gray dust and hair fell onto the pile of kitchen trash. Paula dropped to her knees again. She put her face inches from the dust pile. She sifted through the dirt with her fingers. She was looking for a sparkle. She was looking for a glint of light. I do not see them, she whimpered. I do not see them. Keep looking. I watched them for 10 minutes. 15. They tore apart every bag. They wiped the floor with paper towels to check for loose stones. They turned the kitchen into a disaster zone. The smell was overwhelming. The metallic tang of the fake blood mixed with the rotting food and the stale coffee. Finally, Paula sat back on her heels. She was breathing hard. Her hair was matted to her forehead with sweat and red dye. She looked up at me. Her eyes were desperate, pleading. Mother, she said. Are you sure? Are you sure they were in the hem? I sewed them there myself, I said calmly. 50 stitches, one for each stone. They are not here, she cried. We looked everywhere. We checked the bag. We checked the compactor. Maybe you cut through the pouches, I suggested helpfully. Maybe they rolled away. Diamonds are small, Paula. They bounce. They hide. Paula looked around the kitchen. She looked at the vents in the floor. She looked at the gaps under the cabinets. We have to tear it up, she whispered. What? Bella asked. The kitchen, Paula said. Standing up. She looked manic. We have to tear up the kitchen. If they rolled under the cabinets, if they fell into the vent. She ran to the drawer and pulled out a screwdriver. Mom, stop, Bella said. You are crazy. It is $2 million, Paula screamed. She threw herself onto the floor near the kick plate of the dishwasher. She jammed the screwdriver into the wood. Help me! I am not helping you destroy the house, Bella yelled. It is my house, Paula shrieked. She gave it to me. I can destroy it if I want. I watched as she pried the wood off the cabinet. It splintered with a loud crack. She shone her phone flashlight into the dark space underneath. Do you see anything? Bella asked, inching closer. Dust, Paula spat. Just dust and mouse droppings. She stood up. She looked at the Persian rug in the living room, the one I had bought in Turkey 30 years ago. The one covered in fake blood. The rug, she said. Maybe they fell on the rug when I cut it. She ran back into the living room. She dropped to her hands and knees. She began to comb the fibers of the rug with her fingers. Here, she gasped. I feel something hard. She picked it up. She held it to the light. It was a dried piece of pasta from a previous meal. She threw it across the room. She let out a scream of frustration that sounded like an animal caught in a trap. Where are they? She howled. Where are the diamonds? I walked into the living room. I stood over her. You know, Paula, I said. Arthur always said that greed makes people blind. He said that if you look too hard for the shine, you miss the shape. Shut up, she snapped. Shut up, old woman. Help us look. Get on your knees. I do not think so, I said. If we do not find them, Paula hissed, standing up and looming over me. Then you are going to a home. A state home. The cheapest one I can find. Because I am not paying for you anymore. I am not feeding you. I am done. You are done? I asked. Yes, she screamed. You and your stupid riddles and your hoarding. You hid a fortune from me. You let me struggle. You live in a mortgage-free Victorian mansion, I said. You drive a Mercedes. You have never struggled a day in your life, Paula. I struggled. I ate rice and beans so you could have ballet lessons. I sewed until my fingers bled so you could have a prom dress. And this is how you repay me? By cutting up the symbol of my marriage? By treating me like a servant in the house I bought? It is my house now, she yelled. And if those diamonds are lost, it is your fault. You should have told me. You should have labeled the bag, "Do not cut diamonds inside." I should not have had to, I said. You should have respected my property. You should have asked before you took. She glared at me. She was vibrating with rage. I am going to find them, she vowed. I am going to rip up every floorboard. I am going to sift through every ounce of dust in this house. And when I find them, I am selling them, and you will not see a dime. Is that so? I asked. Yes, she said. Now get out of my way. I need to check the vacuum filter again. She pushed past me. She went back to the vacuum. She dumped the dust out again. She sneezed. She coughed. She dug her hands into the filth. I watched her. I looked at the ruined dress on the floor. The white lace turned pink by the syrup. The jagged edges. It was trash. It was just fabric now. The magic was gone. But the diamonds? Diamonds are the hardest substance on earth. They do not break. They do not melt. They wait. I reached into the deep pocket of my housecoat. My fingers brushed against the soft velvet texture of a small pouch. It was warm from my body heat. I felt the shapes inside. 50 small, hard pebbles. I had removed them 2 days ago. Not because I knew she would destroy the dress. I am not a psychic. I removed them because I had made an appointment with Mr. Gold, the appraiser downtown. I was tired of living in the attic. I was tired of the cold. I had decided, on Tuesday, that I was going to sell 1 diamond. Just 1. It would be enough for a deposit on a condo in Georgetown. A condo with heat. A condo with an elevator. A condo where no one told me I smelled like mothballs. I had planned to leave the rest to Paula. I had planned to put them in a safety deposit box with a letter, to be given to her when I died. I thought it would be a final gift, a legacy. But as I watched her clawing through the garbage, covered in fake blood, screaming at her daughter, I realized something. Paula did not deserve the legacy. She did not deserve the diamonds. She deserved the dust. I squeezed the pouch in my pocket. "Paula," I said. She did not look up. "What?" "Stop digging," I said. "No." "Stop digging," I said, my voice sharper. "They are not there." She stopped. She looked up at me, her face streaked with dirt. "What do you mean?" she asked. "You said they were in the hem." I said Arthur asked me to sew them in the hem. I corrected. And I did. In 1969. So they are here. I took them out, I said. The silence returned. It was heavier this time. It was the silence of a guillotine blade hanging in the air. You took them out?" Paula whispered. "Yes," I said. "When?" "Tuesday," I said. "While you were at yoga." Paula stood up slowly. Her legs were shaking. "Where are they?" she asked. Her voice was trembling. "Where are the diamonds, Mother?" I looked at her. I looked at Bella. I pulled my hand out of my pocket. I held up the purple velvet pouch. "Right here," I said. Paula's eyes widened. She stared at the pouch. She looked like a starving dog seeing a steak. "You have them," she breathed. "You have them in your pocket." "Yes," I said. "Give them to me," she said. She took a step toward me. "No," I said. "Give them to me," she screamed. She lunged. She reached for the pouch. Her hand, sticky with corn syrup, grabbed my wrist. I did not pull away. I let her grab me. "If you take this," I said, my voice low and dangerous, "I will call the police. I will tell them you assaulted me. I will tell them you stole $2 million in unregistered gems. And since Arthur never declared them, the IRS might be very interested in where they came from. Do you want an audit, Paula? Do you want to explain how you pay the taxes on this house with no job?" Paula froze. Her hand hovered over the pouch. She knew I was right. She knew she was trapped. She let go of my wrist. She stepped back. "You are evil," she whispered. "I am tired," I said. "I am tired of being cold. I am tired of being mocked. And I am tired of you." I loosened the drawstring of the pouch. I poured the diamonds into my open palm. They spilled out like a waterfall of light. 50 stones. They caught the light of the chandelier I had paid for, and scattered it into 1,000 rainbows. They were perfect. They were pure. They were cold fire. Paula gasped. Bella's jaw dropped. "Look at them," I said. "Look at what you almost threw away." "They are beautiful," Bella whispered. "They are," I said. Arthur had good taste. I poured them back into the pouch. I pulled the string tight. "And they are leaving," I said. "What?" Paula asked. "I called a taxi," I said. "It should be here any minute. I am going to a hotel. The Jefferson. I hear they have excellent heating." You are leaving?" Paula asked. "But, the house. It is your house," I said. "You wanted it. You have it." "But the bills," she cried. "The property tax. The heating. I cannot pay for this place without your pension. I cannot pay without your help." "You have a big house," I said. "Maybe you can take in boarders. Or maybe—" I looked at the ruined dress on the floor. "Maybe you can start a costume business." A car horn honked outside. 2 short beeps. "That is my ride," I said. I walked to the front door. Paula and Bella followed me, stunned, silent. I opened the door. The cold October air rushed in. It felt good. It felt clean. I turned back to them. "You ruined the packaging, Paula," I said, pointing to the dress. "You destroyed the vessel. And because you did not respect the vessel, you do not get the contents." I patted my pocket. "Happy Halloween," I said. I walked out. I walked down the steps. I got into the taxi. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked. "The Jefferson Hotel," I said. "And then?" "To the jewelry district." I watched them through the rear window as we drove away. Paula and Bella, standing in the doorway of the crumbling Victorian mansion, covered in fake blood and real dirt, watching $2 million drive away in a yellow cab. They looked like zombies, real ones. And I touched the pouch in my pocket. I felt alive. The taxi smelled of old leather and pine air freshener, a stark contrast to the metallic tang of fake blood and desperation I had left behind in the Victorian house. I sat in the back seat, watching the streetlights of Richmond blur past, clutching the velvet pouch in my pocket like a lifeline. The driver, a man with kind eyes in the rearview mirror, glanced back at me. "You all right back there, ma'am? You look like you've seen a ghost." "No," I said, a small smile touching my lips. "I just exorcised one." I checked into the Jefferson Hotel 20 minutes later. I didn't ask for the cheapest room. I asked for a suite. The concierge looked at my old housecoat, my slippers, and my wild gray hair, and hesitated. "I can pay in advance," I said, pulling a credit card from my pocket, the one emergency card Arthur had made me keep. The one I never used because I was too busy saving my pension for Paula's utility bills. "Of course, Mrs. Blackwood," the concierge said, recovering his professionalism. I went up to the room. It was magnificent. High ceilings, a chandelier, a bed that looked like a cloud. I walked to the bathroom and turned on the tap. I washed my face. I looked in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't the invisible grandmother in the attic anymore. She was Iris, and she was worth $2 million. Back at the house on Monument Avenue, the silence was deafening. Paula sat on the kitchen floor, surrounded by coffee grounds, eggshells, and the sticky red ruins of the wedding dress. Her hands were stained pink, her knees were bruised. Bella was crying in the corner, scrolling through her phone, deleting the pre-party TikToks she had posted earlier. "She took them," Paula whispered to the empty room. "She actually took them." "What are we going to do?" Bella whined. "Mom, the party started an hour ago. I don't have a costume." Paula looked at her daughter. She looked at the shredded lace. She looked at the reality of her life without the buffer of my pension. "We don't have a costume," Paula said, her voice hollow. "And as of tomorrow, I don't think we have a mortgage payment." She picked up a piece of the ruined hem. It was light, worthless, just silk and dust. 6 months later, spring in Georgetown is a riot of cherry blossoms and expensive manicures. I sat on the balcony of my new condo, overlooking the Potomac River. The air was sweet. I was wearing a new suit, cream silk, tailored. I had hired a stylist, a lovely young woman named Sarah, who told me that gray hair was chic and that I had excellent bone structure. I liked her. She didn't call me old. My phone buzzed on the glass table. It was a notification from my real estate agent in Richmond. "Listing update. 2415 Monument Avenue, price reduced." I clicked on the link. There it was. My old house. The Victorian lady I had restored with my own hands. The photos showed empty rooms. The furniture was gone, likely sold to pay off debts. The garden was overgrown. Paula hadn't been able to afford the landscaper. I scrolled down to the description. Historic charm. Needs TLC. Motivated seller. Motivated, I chuckled. That was one word for it. Desperate was another. I hadn't spoken to Paula since Halloween. She had tried to call, of course, dozens of times. Voicemails, ranging from screaming rage to weeping apologies. She sent letters. She sent Bella to knock on the door of my old friends to find out where I was. But I was gone. I had sold one diamond, just one, to a private collector in New York for $45,000. It was enough to put a down payment on this condo and hire a lawyer to update my will. The rest of the stones were in a safety deposit box at a bank down the street. They were safe. They were waiting. Not for Paula. I had set up a new trust. The Arthur and Iris Blackwood Scholarship for Textile Arts. It would fund students who wanted to learn to sew, to create, to build things with their hands. I took a sip of my tea. Earl Grey. Hot. My doorbell rang. I walked to the door. It was the concierge. "Package for you, Miss Blackwood," he said, handing me a small box. "Thank you, James." I took the box to the kitchen. I opened it. Inside was a framed photograph. It was a picture of Arthur and me on our wedding day. I had thought it was lost in the move, or maybe destroyed by Paula in a fit of spite. But my lawyer had managed to retrieve a few personal items from the house before the foreclosure proceedings began. I looked at the photo. I looked at the dress. It was perfect. The lace was intact. The hem was heavy with secrets. Arthur was smiling at me. He looked like he knew. "We did it, Arthur," I whispered. "We finally spent the insurance policy." I placed the photo on the mantelpiece, next to a vase of fresh tulips. I thought about the dress. The real dress was gone, destroyed in a pile of garbage and greed. But the dress didn't matter. The fabric didn't matter. What mattered was the lining. What mattered was what we had hidden inside. And I had saved the only part that counted. I walked out to the balcony again. I watched the boats on the river. I touched the velvet pouch in my pocket, just to feel the weight of it. I was Iris Blackwood. I was a seamstress. I was a survivor. And I had stitched myself a brand new life. Narrator. Some heirlooms are made of gold, and some are made of grit. Paula thought the value was in the dress, but she forgot that the woman who made it was the real treasure. If you enjoyed this story of hidden fortunes and poetic justice, please like and subscribe. And remember, be careful what you throw away. You never know what's sewn into the lining.